I think the thing is I do get burned out at times, and my wife will tell you that every once in a while she's kind of got to pull me back and say, okay, we haven't seen you all week, or we haven't sat down and had dinner together in 3 days, and so I think family support and support of friends is really important.
Welcome to the Minute Mastery Podcast, a conversational productivity and time management podcast where busy authors and entrepreneurs are inspired to create time for what truly matters. I'm your host, Ngozi Edema. I'm a time management coach, writer, and entrepreneur. Here, you are encouraged to turn your minutes into milestones and to create at least 1 hour a day working on your goals without feeling overwhelmed. Once upon a time, and they lived happily ever after. Children love those phrases. I love them too, and I suspect you may love them too. As a mom, I've spent hours reading and listening to my children read their favorite stories. And now I write stories too. Here is one of them you may want to check out. The Proud Sunflower. It is the story of Princess Sanzu, the Sunflower Princess. A princess loved by all, but who got into trouble. Within the pages of The Proud Sunflower, you encounter what real beauty is. Your kid will love the beautiful story and the powerful illustrations. The Proud Sunflower serves as a gentle reminder that we all need to stand on the shoulders of others in order to succeed. So, read this story with your little ones and allow it to illuminate the universal language of empathy, forgiveness, and personal growth. Proud Sunflower is a top book on parenting, morals, and responsibility, and it is available in the Kindle store and on paperback formats. Excellent for beginner readers. Click in the link in this episode's show notes in the description on YouTube to order yours. And check out my other storybooks to read with your kids or gift a child a storybook. Joining me in today's is someone who knows all about discipline, dedication, storytelling, and hard work. My guest, Rodney Carpentier, is a law enforcement officer who has spent years navigating high pressure situations while still making time for his passions. When he's not serving his community, you can find him embracing the serenity of the mountains and creating compelling fiction that transports readers to new worlds. How does he find time to do all of this? That's exactly what we are about to find out in today's episode of the Minute Mastery Podcast. Welcome to the show, Rodney.
Thank you very much.
It's not every day we find someone with such an impressive CV like you, having to do so many things like you do. So, as someone in law enforcement and also a writer, how do you balance your time between these very different high stake roles?
One of the major things I do is compartmentalize work and the different kinds of work. When I'm going to work, when I'm at work, and when I'm coming home from work, that is kind of my transition time. I find I have a long commute, and it takes about 45 minutes for me to get from my home to work, and then obviously on the way back. So what I do is I use that time to kind of transition in and go from this mindset of home and whatever I was doing at home, and I transferred that completely over to work. And when I get to work, I'm all about business. Whatever my assignment is for the day or whatever I have to take care of, I'm focused on that. I'm not worried about it. I try not to worry about things that are going on at home, or, in the case of this, balancing the two things. I'm not really worried about, writing and what the next thing is going to happen. With that, I worry about work. And then when I transition home, I get home, I, compartmentalize my family time. I have a wife and a daughter. So that's really important to put time into my family. But then I'll take that time and I'll say, all right, the next hour is going to be dedicated to, and if I'm in the middle of writing something, I'll say I'm going to write for the next hour. And I do writing sprints where I'll set a clock and I'll do 15 minutes solid. Don't stop, just go through. I'll write, and then when the alarm goes off, I take a break, and I kind of sit back. I let my mind kind of relax, and then I go back in it. And when that hour's up, that hour's up. That, and whatever I have is what I have. And on the other side of writing is the marketing aspect of being a writer. You don't just write a book and magically everybody buys it. There's a lot of business side of things. I'm independent. I'm self-published. So if I want people to buy my book, I have to kind of lead them there. So that involves or soldier different things when it comes to social media or email campaigns, or taking the folks that I do have as a readership and giving them that attention, giving them that time. So again, compartmentalizing that half an hour. I'm going to, in the next half hour, I'm going to get on Podmatch and I'm going to respond to some podcasters and see if I can get hooked up with with an interview or two. And I compartmentalize that time. So that's how I've been able to have the success that I've had.
You run a very busy schedule. So in one day, you are father, husband, law enforcement officer, writer, marketer, and even
Yeah.
social media manager and your
Yep.
own virtual assistant. So, what is your strategy for staying productive and staying away from burnouts and overwhelm? Because if you have so many things like this to do, then overwhelm and burnouts naturally creeps in.
I think the thing is I do get burned out at times, and my wife will tell you that, every once in a while she's kind of got to pull me back and say, okay, we haven't seen you all week, or we haven't sat down and had dinner together in 3 days. And so I think family support and support of friends is really important to that. And then at work, I have a really good support structure with everyone I work with. I came up, I'm 16 and a half years into my career at this point, and a lot of people who are even my bosses, we all started at the same level. So we have a good relationship. I'm not a junior person where, I don't have that support. So if I'm having a work issue, I have plenty of people I can go to that can help alleviate my problems or give me that guidance. Or we're all have very similar experiences so that they understand where I'm coming from. So support is a huge part to avoid that burnout for me. And again, just being focused on what the task is. They teach us. I took a class with my law enforcement career. It's all about officer survival and street survival and mental survival also. And they have an acronym called WIN. What's important now? And it's about focusing on the things that you're doing and what the next thing is going to be. When I was assigned to patrol, working midnights, things could be quiet and nothing's going on, and then our radio tone, they ring, and when they do that, there's a call. Now you have to transition from, okay, I'm sitting here stationary, nothing's happening, to I may have to go do something. And as you kind of prepare yourself mentally, it's okay, hey, it's my call, it's going to be my call. I'm going to a motor vehicle accident. What's important? Well, it's important that I get there safely. So I need to make sure I have my safety belt on. I need to make sure that when I'm driving midnights in New York, we have a lot of deer, I have to get there. So that's what's important first, getting there. Then when I get there, what's the first thing I'm going to do? And you kind of mentally plan these things out. So I'll take that and I'll bring it home and say, okay, what's important now? I just got home from work. I haven't seen my family all day. I want to say hi to my daughter. I want to see how she's doing in school. Check on my wife. She works from home, so she's usually on calls and stuff. But, hey, what's going on with you? Hey, the garbage has got to go out. The dogs need to get fed. The dishes need to be, and I try to focus on whatever that is and then move on from that once the job's complete.
Thank you. I really appreciate the fact that you brought in support from family members and your colleagues at work. Support is a two-way street. Sometimes you give support and you should be willing to receive support, because sometimes some people put themselves in a space where they don't get the support that they should
Right.
get. They might reject support from family members or support from colleagues. But if you make yourself available and say, "Oh, please help me out when you see me in this sort of situation," then you are getting a gold mine as far as I am concerned, both
Hmm.
from family members and friends. So I'm very happy that you brought this point out, because I cannot tell you how much I have personally gained from support from family members, from my husband, from my children, even giving me one or two tips that I on my own I would not get. And when they see me stressed, they tell me, my husband tells me, this is time for you to step backwards and take a break.
Absolutely.
So that support is very, very important. And I'm glad you mentioned that. So we're now talking about creativity, and writing fiction requires focus. It requires creativity, which can be challenging when you're juggling a full-time job. So how do you structure your time to ensure that you can stay creative and productive in your writing while meeting the demands of your law enforcement career and even family responsibilities?
So I won't speak for all writers, but I'll speak for myself. I take a lot of inspiration from my work experiences, put it into my fiction. My debut novel uh, involves law enforcement officers, and they're based on people that I know. So I take, that's the one thing I guess I take from work home is the people and the friendships that I have. And I've based a lot of my characters on people I actually know. So it actually makes the creativity a little bit easier, because I'm like, how would so and so approach this situation? What would he say? What would she do next? And the same thing to a degree, in because again, it's law enforcement. The main characters are police officers, but they have families. They have moms and dads, and they have spouses, and they have, other friends who are outside of law enforcement. And I look at the interactions that I have with my family and the questions or the things that I talk about with them, and I just try to make it as natural as possible. Obviously, moving the plot forward and not having, oh, what did you do today for lunch? And then, making it move the story forward, but trying to make it as natural as possible. Have maybe not word for word, but I'll base it on conversations I've actually had with people. So that helps the creativity by kind of bringing real life into what I'm doing. And when when you're kind of basing it on that, you don't really need to dig really deep in order to find something to put down on the screen.
Yeah, you're writing for people. And it is real life experiences that happen in people's life that will make them um, get be interested in what you're writing. People can stay
Right.
there because they can see themselves there, that, oh, yeah, that's true. That's what I would do in that situation. They see a character that they find relatable. And so I always say to people that when you're writing for real humans. So you should put humanity into it. And it is real life
Absolutely.
stories that come into fiction. We don't go from outer space to go and get the
Right.
inspiration is something that has to do with real life everyday people. So we get inspiration from the people around us. So in in law enforcement, in my own imagination, I know that you are often in a situation where you need to stay alert and ready for action, because you don't know when there'll be a call for you to come out and help out. So how do you use your downtime? Those periods when you are not doing anything during your shifts, or slower periods at work, writing or brainstorming ideas for your next projects.
So, my current position, I've been a supervisor for the last 9.5 years. So, and I started out as a patrol supervisor. Again, I worked midnights for a number of years. I moved to the afternoon shift. I finally got back to days, and now my job is more administrative. And I'm typically a lot busier now than I used to be. So I'll kind of speak a little bit more historically. During those downtime periods, I would use those to learn. I listened to, that's how I originally got into listening to podcasts, into audiobooks. And that kind of led me to the point where I am now because I was picking up so many new things where, you know, um, where previously I might have, wasted time, watching silly videos or listening to just whatever the pop radio station was. I was trying to use that downtime to occupy myself and get back into listening to books, get back in listening to different kinds of podcasts to learn something. Either politically or I really liked true crime, which is another backdrop for my book. One of the characters is a true crime podcaster who's kind of the catalyst for a lot of the events in the book. So I really found myself learning a lot of really interesting things. And ironically, as much as I try to stay prepared mentally for, what the next thing is, the idea for the book actually came while I was working. I was working an overnight shift and I was working a double, working 16 hours in a row. And about 2 o'clock in the morning, I'd been on since 3 the previous afternoon. I was extremely tired and I'm sitting at my desk, kind of, don't know if I'm going to make it. And everything, we don't like the word quiet in law enforcement. It's the Q word. We don't like that word. But it was quiet. Then even the radio was going off. So, and I was all caught up on my administrative work and I was just kind of trying to keep myself occupied when this idea popped into my head. And, that question kind of percolated and eventually turned into what became my debut novel. So, I may not actively work on things, but the ideas are always there. You're always thinking. And, once you get something in your head, you kind of ruminate on it. So while I don't typically mix the two worlds, originally that's kind of where it was. It was kind of this melting of, that creativity coming in and saying, hey, what if you had this situation? And then at the same time, like, okay, well, what do you know? Law enforcement, police officers, the people that they interact with on a daily basis. How can those two things mix? And I think that's what I've done.
Well done. So, do you carry like a notebook with you to write down ideas? Because sometimes you might have this idea while you are sitting down at your desk, and because like I like it that you said you don't mix both worlds, but maybe when you get home, you are now in a different world. Do you remember those things that you thought of, or do you write them in a notebook to help you remember next time, or do you have a way of having a record of them so that you don't forget?
Really depends on what the idea is. For instance, that night back in 2022 when this spark of inspiration came, I took a piece of copy paper that was laying around and I need to write, I need to get this out, and I really felt like I needed to get it out. And, I wrote maybe, the front page and part of the back half, just kind of pushing out this idea. So that was kind of initially, and I found myself in the past basically writing down on anything that I have available. My memory is not as good as it used to be when I was younger. And sometimes ideas will get away, but sometimes, again, that long commute really helps too. Because there's days, I'll listen to music or I'll listen to a podcast or I'll listen to an audiobook, and there's just days I'm like, I need some silence, especially when I just finished my book, Our Lady of the Overlook, is the first in a trilogy. So I just finished the second book and it's with my editor now. But there were times when I was working on it and I'm like, I would have, I would have left my house possibly, after a little bit of a writing session in the morning with, an idea. And I'm like, okay, how do I work this out? So instead of sitting there listening to something and having, a lot of thoughts in my head, I would and just sit in silence and I would think. Or I'm sitting by myself in the car. I would talk to myself and talk it out. And I found later in life that I'm an audio person. I learn better when I hear something because it sticks into my head, obviously with the podcast, the audio books and things. So I find myself, if I can talk it out, hey, what if we did this? Oh, but that wouldn't work. Or, hey, maybe, everyone's going to expect this. Maybe I should go in a different direction. I talk it out to myself. I find myself getting, those ideas stick a little bit better. And then maybe that evening when I get home, I'm like, okay, what was I doing this morning? Okay, we left here, so maybe we should do this. And I'll try it out. And again, my sprints, I try not to go back. It's ever forward, always forward. And so I think that's really how I do a lot of that. But every once in a while, yeah, I have to write it down. I have to get it out. I had a situation last summer. We were on vacation, and I was reading a book. An actual physical book that I had gotten at the store while we were camping. And so I've been reading it. It was fine. And we fell asleep in our camper. And sometime in the morning, another idea stuck in my head, and I couldn't sleep anymore. And it was stuck there. So, I crawled out of the camper and I went outside. It was a little chilly, pulled the blanket up close, and I had a little notebook and I just started writing this idea down. I don't know where it's going to go eventually. I've been very busy with book 2. So, but I still have those notes somewhere so that, hopefully when things slow down with this current rotation of writing and self-publishing, I can go back to that and see where that's going to take me. But so I guess it's a little bit of both. I don't think I have one set rule on how I have to do something.
Okay. So, given your love for mountains, I love the mountains too. I live in the Canadian Rockies,
Oh, really?
and I'm so glad, ever so thankful that I have the mountains very close to me. As I'm sitting here, I can see the mountains. So, it's a gift I really do appreciate. So, how do you incorporate nature into your creative process?
So, where I live in New York State, I live about 30 miles from New York City. It's very suburban, houses on top of one another. And that doesn't really inspire me. But again, like I said, we go camping a lot, and in the Catskills of New York, which are about 2 hours from where we live. So it's a very easy commute for us. We used to go up, every summer, at least 2 or 3 times. My wife and I they have a club that seeks to hike all 35 mountains in the Catskills that are over 3,500 feet, which aren't Rocky Mountains, but those are it's a challenging thing to do. I wouldn't say difficult, but it's challenging, especially some of the ones that don't have trails. So we were spending all this time up in the Catskills, 2 or 3 times a year, going to see these mountains. And then at first we would camp and we would hike all day, and we would go back to the campsite, and we would relax around the fire. We would cook dinner and just kind of camp and then hike. And after a while, we had a third person that was hiking with us, and I would say about a third of the way through the mountains, we would go up, we would hike all day, and then on our way back to the campsite, we would stop, maybe have a couple of celebratory beverages and have dinner. And more, it became a hiking trip. Meant we would hike, we would go out, and then we would go back to the campground because it was less expensive to stay at the campground than to stay at some of the expensive ski places or hotels or bed and breakfast. So a little bit of cost effectiveness there. But as we were in these communities and sitting with people, it's just so tight knit. Because you had tourists that were up there visiting, but you had the local folks that were so dependent on the tourism, and they just had very different lives than what I was accustomed to in the hustle and bustle of suburban New York City. I have a 45-minute commute to work every day, but I take highways. It takes me, I can set my cruise control at 70, 75 miles an hour and, go to work that way. Up there, you're cruising through some of these back roads, 40, 45. It's so relaxing. It's so just, the worst thing you can do is get behind a farmer on his tractor and you have to wait a little bit, and I just love that. So, to this point, we actually, eventually purchased some property up there, and we have a second home. We're planning to probably move up there after I retire from law enforcement in a couple years and kind of live a lot slower, more relaxed life. So that's what the mountains really represent. The relaxation, the laid back kind of stuff. And then when you switch over to the fiction, it also really intrigued me. It's why I set Our Lady of the Overlook in the Catskills. There's a lot of mystery up there. There are a lot of trails, you can hike for hours and not see anybody. And I wouldn't say it's scary, but it's just there's the very lonely feeling at times. And I found this great location. And this idea sparked in my head back in 2022, I had the law enforcement, I had the life, and I said, where can I set this? And the Overlook, is named for a specific, outcrop called the Palinville Overlook, which looks east, over the Hudson Valley from a pretty good height, not the tippy top, but a really good height. And it's got a clear view of the entire Hudson Valley going all the way to the Hudson River. And, on a clear day, you could see everything. And I'm like, this is a great site. It's a murder mystery. So I'm like, I should put a body here. Fiction, obviously. So, so the mountains are, I think, are a key aspect to what I'm writing and what I really enjoy.
Yeah. The most amazing drives I've had vacation is driving through the mountains. It's breathtaking. So these days you see a lot of people, especially children, they have this um disorder, the nature deficit disorder, because most people don't go outdoors, especially children. They are on their device. They don't go outdoors for anything anymore. So do you find that spending time outdoors helps you recharge and stay productive, both in your writing and in your professional life?
Absolutely. Getting outside, like right now, it's, I don't know how it is in Canada. It's pretty cold down here in,
It's cold here.
New York. We had the ice storms. We've had a ton of snow this year. And my wife doesn't like the cold and she gets stir crazy after a while. Fortunately, up at we call it the cabin, our property up in the Catskills, the water pipe froze. She was planning on spending weeks up there working on it, but now we have no water, so she's just really feeling really trapped right now. So I know she and I are both really looking forward to the spring. It's been a couple years since we've hiked regularly. We're really looking forward to that. Back in September, I was supposed to go to a conference in Florida when the hurricane hit and they canceled the conference, but I had already taken the time off. My family was already prepared for me to be away. So I said, you know what? I'll do a writing retreat. I'll take the 4 days I was going to be in Florida and I'll go up to the cabin. I will take my computer and I will write. And for the most part, that's what I did. But at certain points, I was like, I need to get out. And so I went for a ride one day and went to, they have an outdoor, they have an old, it's a bunch of just, it's a trail that kind of cuts through what I'm guessing used to be old farmland or something. And it's not super challenging. It's not really a hike. It's just a walk and just to get outside for a little bit and get some fresh air. And again, that same thing that I talked about, talking things out loud while I'm driving, I felt the same idea with just walking around. Didn't listen to anything. I didn't have other distractions. Just kind of walked around and I just ruminated and thought and talked out loud and got weird stares from people walking next to me. But, it was really important to do that. And one of the last things I did that week, the weather kind of turned poor on me, but I did the hike up to this overlook at one point because I wanted to see it. I had it in my mind for the first book. I wanted to see it again for the second book. So it's a pretty long hike, and from where I did it from, I'm basically at the bottom of the valley going all the way up, probably I don't know, 1800 to 2000 feet. So that one's a little challenging, and then you kind of get up, and then you got to go back down, and then out. So I wanted to see that again, and that was a really rejuvenating thing for me. I went back to the cabin and kind of took that as a way of kind of getting through the last sprints of that week.
Thank you. So, you have done so well managing to high stake career, writing and law enforcement. So, what advice do you have for anyone who is struggling with time management, especially when you have a very busy schedule like yours?
I kind of adapted a family mantra, something my dad used to tell me. Early is on time is late, and late is not acceptable. My wife will tell you I'm chronically early. If I'm not 15 minutes early, why did we even go? But I've taken that to also mean kind of being prepared. If you're prepared, if you're early for something, if you're anticipating something, you're ready to go when it occurs. Talk about that. What's important now? What's your mindset? You got to put yourself in that mindset. Because if you try to react either at the moment that you need to, or after the moment passes you by, now you're playing catch up. And I don't know about you, and I won't speak for every one of your listeners, but the worst feeling I have is feeling like I'm late and feeling like I'm rushing. It's nice to have kind of deadlines for yourself on things and being able to say, I'm going to do this by this time. Give yourself that time and try to be early and try to beat that deadline and say, that way if you beat that deadline, now you have time to go back and make sure things are to the point where you want it to be. I just sent the second book to my editor, and I had a very, very short window, and I was planning to finish on Monday, and send it to her by the afternoon. And I actually was able to finish on Sunday with my revisions. So Monday, I could take a little bit of time. I didn't have to feel like I was rushing. I felt a lot more comfortable after that. So setting that deadline and making sure that you're ahead of it is one thing. And again, that compartmentalization and just saying, this is what I'm doing at this time, and dedicating yourself to one task at a time, not worrying about what's going on, eliminating the distractions. If your phone's a problem, don't have your phone on you. If, when it comes to family, I tell my wife, or I tell my daughter, I'm going to be writing, I'm going to be downstairs. I go to that space and I give them the time frame, and I say, it's going to be an hour. Give me an hour and then I'll be back up. During November, I was doing what's called NaNoWriMo, National Novel Writing Month. And the goal of that is to write 50,000 words in a single month, which sounds really easy until you add all the things on that, that we've described through the earlier part of the show. And November was super busy for me. So I was on, we were Thanksgiving, because it was the end of the month. I had like 8,000 words I needed to write that weekend. Thanksgiving, we host my family, my in-laws come down. We had friends come in from Texas, and any chance I got, I would steal 15 minutes or half an hour to go down and write. And again, you talk about having, people to support you, but people to also kind of keep you on that, keep you on that train. They're like, hey, we have people here. And I said, okay, you're right. I'm sorry to be rude, but can you give me half an hour? Can you give me 45 minutes? And, it's a little bit easier to negotiate that time. And and when you're spending time kind of like money, and you say, I only have 45 minutes, you sometimes get this mindset of, now I want to use it as frugally as possible. I want to make sure that I'm getting the most out of that time, and then move on to whatever your next thing is.
Oh, thank you. I know, like even just doing this interview, I have to tell them, you know what? Just give me 1 hour. I'll be done with this. Please don't come and disturb me while this is going on. Yeah. So yes, it's good to negotiate that time especially with family members. Let them know your schedule and let them know why you need that time. And if the time is too much, they will tell you. And you're like, okay, but you
Yes.
gave me 20 minutes then. So you needed 1 hour, but you dropped it down to 20 minutes. Most people are reasonable. They will say yes. Okay, 20 minutes. And then my 12-year-old will check the time and let you know when it's 20. And they will let you know when it's 20 minutes. So
Yep.
yes, so I like that negotiating. So what genre do you write on so that like people listening, they want to connect with you? You're a fiction book writer.
Yeah, I have a website. It's rlcarpentierwriter.com. I'm on social media as RL Carpentier. Debut novelist, I think it is on Facebook. I don't remember. I have to change that once I get the second book out. But I'm on Facebook. I have the website. My book, which is I can't get the pointer right, is right here. It's called Our Lady of the Overlook. Is available through my website, or if you want to involve our friend Jeff Bezos, it is available on Amazon as an ebook. So those are the main places I am. I am getting around to a lot of events. I'm going to be local here in New York tomorrow, but also this year. This year I'm going to be in Tampa, Florida in May. I will be in Louisiana in the fall, I think the beginning of September, and then Massachusetts in November. So, and I put all those events on my website. I have a weekly newsletter, which isn't necessarily entertaining, but is very informative, and it's a quick read, and I'm pretty regular about it. And so those are the main places I am.
Thank you so much. So I will going to grab your links and it's going to be in this episode show notes. So thank you very much for coming to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Very, very insightful and informative. I really, really enjoyed having you here. And I'm sure many people will benefit from it because that is the things that we all struggle with
Hmm.
time. And so prioritizing and allocating time to the various important things in our lives is a skill that we all need to learn. And you are doing well with that. So thank you for coming to the show.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. So thanks for tuning in to the Minute Mastery podcast. If you have found this episode helpful, please share it with someone who could use better time in their day. And remember to subscribe and leave a review. Until next time, remember, you are in control of your time and you've got this.